Poly and perfluorylalkyl substances, or PFAS, are widespread in our consumer products and, unfortunately, now in our environment. We've struggled to break them down and get them out of our water supply, but a new and much smaller competitor has entered the ring to take on that challenge. We've talked about poly and perfluorylalkyl substances on this channel before, but for a brief recap, PFAS were invented in the mid 20th century as part of a larger trend of synthesizing chemicals and putting them in everything because they're so dang useful, only to later discover that there may have been downsides to that in the form of serious health risks. PFAS are great because they repel water and lipids and they're super stable so they don't easily break down. A bunch of the things that are non-stick or water or grease repellent have those properties because they are made of or are coated with these PFAS. Teflon, for instance, PFAS. Chemicals in firefighter kit, also, turns out, PFAS. You don't want those to lose those properties or to degrade easily into your food, but the downside is they don't degrade easily. And while they were first thought to be physiologically inert, yeah, they're not. These chemicals are associated with a bunch of health risks, and now they're pervasive throughout our environment and our water and dust cycle. The best time to eliminate PFAS from our water supply is decades ago, but the second best time is now. And we've previously discussed a couple different methods scientists and engineers have discovered to mitigate the risks and reduce the amount of these chemicals and work on breaking them down. Some involve just getting them out of our personal household water supplies by boiling water to distill the PFAS out. Others involve surprisingly simple combinations of chemicals common to most research labs. But while those methods are cheap and accessible and good to have in our toolbox, these methods are limited in their scope. We're talking about chemicals in our global water supply, and we can't boil the globe. No, stop. I looked into it. We cannot boil the whole planet. It's apparently a bad idea and gets you on some kind of supervillain list. And I'm not going to clickbait you either. The new paper I'm going to tell you about also won't be a global solution to the PFAS problem. There may not be that kind of just hit the fix everything button kind of solution. This may be a patchwork of solutions that apply in different specific environments or scenarios, combine with regulation to minimize additional PFAS in our environment and to incentivize implementing the solutions we do find. I talk about PFAS a lot because, well, it's an interesting scientific problem, and scientists have risen to the occasion with innovative, clever solutions, and because, like Mr. Rogers said, when I see scary things in the news, I look for the helpers, and these researchers who just published in Scientific Advances are the helpers. And so are the bacteria they're studying. That's right, nature's alchemists do more than just synthesize shoes. Although some of the bacteria we're studying today are close cousins of our bacterial leather stars of a previous episode. The bacteria our researchers have been studying here are all anaerobic bacteria, meaning they get their energy for cellular respiration without oxygen, unlike us, who have the mitochondrial powerhouse of the cell, who require oxygen as their terminal electron acceptor to produce our biological energy currency. And I'm not just telling you they're anaerobic bacteria to throw in some fun detail about them. That's gonna be super relevant in just a moment. You see, anaerobic respiration is an umbrella category. It's literally just all the methods of cellular respiration that don't use oxygen as its terminal electron acceptor in its cascade of chemical reactions to generate ATP for cellular energy. If you use oxygen for that job, aerobic. If you use sulfates or ferric iron or anything else, anaerobic. But if you're gonna be an organism with energy to do your thing, there's gotta be something that you use. Which brings me back to our bacteria and what they use for their anaerobic respiration. They break down halogen carbon bonds for their energy. Halogens being these nerds on the table here. And if you're looking at fluorine there, and remembering we're talking about poly and perfluorylalkyl substances today, you may start to see where we're going with this. See, Halogens are extremely electronegative, so for our anaerobic bacterial brethren who don't use oxygen as a terminal electron receptor, they're pretty attractive. But this is a high-risk, high-reward strat. Fluorine is the only element more electronegative than oxygen, and oxygen is rough on aerobic organisms at the best of times. It's great for our mitochondrial chemistry because it's so reactive, but our cells have to carefully manage that reactivity with antioxidant protocols to prevent those reactions from going off and causing damage. And fluorine is even more freaking reactive. So for me, as an aerobic organism, I'd rather have oxygen. It's plenty sufficient for my ATP generation. Well, these organohalide respiring bacteria are absolute lords of YOLO who crack open these halogen carbon bonds, risky as they are, and use that as part of their terminal electron receptor to generate further energy. We discovered this type of bacteria in the 1960s, and scientists have been interested in them for decades as a means of what's called bioremediation, using biology and organisms to break down and clean up pollutants in our environment. These bacteria were observed breaking down carbon-chlorine bonds and other organic halide compounds, including in pollutants like some kinds of PFAS. But as this new study shows, bacteria, in this case acetobacteria, that use organohalides for energy can even break down the final bosses of this organic chemical family, the organofluorine bonds of poly and perfluorylalkyl substances. And our researchers even identified the enzymes that allow these bacteria to do it. The result isn't always obnoxiously stable PFAS to absolutely harmless compound, but even breaking these substances down to lesser forms can make it easier to combine with other techniques to then finish cleaning them up. I joke that bacteria are alchemists, and sometimes it really does seem like they can turn anything into anything. They can make insulin for us, they can make our shoes, they can break down plastics. It seems like they just have transformation superpowers. But these bioremediation techniques aren't some accident or show of bacterial omnipotence. I talk about anaerobic respiration and its chemistry because it shows there's a reason bacteria can break down these incredibly stubborn chemicals and avoid lethal damage from the released fluoride. Which, by the way, they do by pumping the fluoride right out of their little cell bodies like, get out of here! It's the only thing better than magic. It's science. From here, there are a couple directions for this research. One is more in-depth study of the mechanisms that specifically let these bacteria break down the types of PFAS they break down. The better we understand the enzymes they use, the more ideas we may have to attack them ourselves. And the other piece is finding engineering ways to make use of this information, particularly since this is one of the few PFAS breakdown approaches we could try to use on groundwater, which is, this is true, notoriously hard to boil. Engineers are already working on material microbe interfaces to help the bacteria do their job and to take care of their bacterial byproducts. Is this bacterial alchemy, chemistry, the whole answer to environmental contamination by PFAS? No. But the more solutions we find, the more types of PFAS we figure out how to break down of the roughly 9,000 types, each with their own chemistry to untangle, the less these substances feel like inevitable doom, and the more they're looking like a very challenging problem. And let me tell you, the only organisms that love a challenge more than scientists? Organohalide respiring, anaerobic, lords of YOLO bacteria. Go have a crunch on Teflon or something, bacteria. You earned it.